Geographical features and their location essentially combined two forms. One of it which was a natural landscape, another it was a man-made or what was called as a artificial and what was called as cultural as well. The artificial or cultural landscape comprised of two components. One that is formed by the rural areas, and that was rural settlement. The second is urban areas and urban growth and all the phenomena associated with urban development, urban growth as well as urbanization. Now, all of these words happen to be completely different. The basic purpose of understanding this section, that is urban growth, urban development and urbanization, is to make you aware about the differentiation of these terms, urban growth, urban development, urbanization, and at the same time also to let you know that is what are the type of forms that are going to be associated with it. And not only that, how is it that the words going to differ? Not only that, how is it that the different type of phenomena also goes on to take place? And when we are talking about different type of phenomena, we are talking about the amazing variety of phenomena that is characterizing any urban area. Beginning with the very basics of it, and the basics of it is going to be associated with the definition of urban settlements. That's the first part. What exactly goes on to comprise an urban area? Now, urban area is going to be somehow associated with what we're going to be calling it as a town or a city. Now, in general terms, both of these words are going to be used in an interchangeable manner. Of course, they are not so, but then that is what is going to be the general exercise of this topic here. Urban settlements generally have a much more larger population than a rural area, and that is the differentiating point of it. Not only that, the urban areas also go on to be having a node, a center, which the rural areas may go on to lack. Of course, not everywhere that it goes on to apply in condition of India, but then it is a part of it. Although the size threshold of the urban area will go on to vary from region to region, country to country. For example, in Australia, what will be called as urban, it will not go on to be the same thing in India, because in India the density of population is very, very high. Australia has a very low density population. You will go on to find that a center in Canberra is urban, and Canberra happens to be having a population much less than that of Noida. Now, for that reason, you will also go on to find that not only that portion, Maldives also goes on to be having a much more lesser population in comparison to that of Noida. So, we are talking about that is the size threshold goes on to be significant in this case here. Second is that urban population areas are going to be characterized by high density, and high density is essentially a product of what we call as concentration of economic activities. Concentration of economic activity means agricultural activities, industrial activities, and what not. All of these are going to be components of it and part of it. That is going to be the second component associated with it. The third is associated with the fact that urban settlements and places are concerned wholly with non-agricultural activities, and that's what our concern. It is place is significant. That is with non-agricultural activities. That portion is significant, and in many places it is going to be concerned with the provision of goods, services, and the hinterlands as well. That is what sort of services that it goes on to provide to the adjoining areas. So it can be service, it can be something like industrial activity as well, which can go on to be manufacturing also. The fourth part is there is most of the people who go on to live in urban places, they have a particular way of life. That's a distinctive way of life. That is how is it that they go on to live. All of those people that go on to live in a specific manner, in a particular manner, and the entire process associated with it is what we go on to be calling it by the name of urbanism. Urbanism means it's a type of a philosophy that I go on to live in a particular manner. The lifestyle of a person in a rural area is going to be very, very different from that of a person living in an urban area, and that is what is a differentiating force in this case. Now, having said that, you also come to know of certain other aspects. That is, how is it that the urban areas are going to be defined? This is the one that we talked about was the concept of an urban area. How is it that they can go on to be defined? Now, in this case, different forms of urban settlement, that can go on to be a town, it can go on to be a city, it can go on to be a conurbation, whatever it is, they all go on to be different. Now, from an examination point of view, this is going to be significant, that's going to be important, that you know the smaller nuances of differences that exist from one to another and so on. So, a town is what we're going to be calling it as a closely built up settlement. Now, the word in this case is going to be a closely built settlement. This word is pretty significant. Closely built means that is the dwellings, that is the houses, which we're going to be technically calling as dwellings, are close to each other. So, they're closely built settlement with services. That means the significant aspect here is that there are services that are available. It's not agriculture, it's not based on agriculture, it is based on services, provision of certain type of services. That is going to be significant, and most often it is going to be industrial activity. And when we are talking about industrial activity, we are essentially talking about manufacturing. Now, these definitions have been by and large picked up from the Western notion of an urban growth or urban development. Indians have known the type of urban growth and development that the world will never experience at all. And you would have known it, that is all the way from 4th century BC to about 1200 BC, something like some 1000 years of sorts, and 800 years specifically, the type of urban growth that was taking place, and that was sustainable. The most important part was that was very, very sustainable as well. That is, the world has never seen and will never come to see also right now. At least we cannot go to imagine that part. Of course, the grandeur of India at that point of time was very, very different. So, industrial activities is what we mean by manufacturing. Towns are very different, and towns are going to be different from any other center, let's say from a rural area, because they are going to be having a railway and a bus station. These are going to be making it very, very distinctive and very, very different. And of course, because they are going to be larger number of people, these people are going to be working in a different manner. They will also going to have places of amusement, which can be maybe cinema, which can be an amusement park, that can be a theatre, that can be something like a live theatre as well. Now, this is significant because in rural areas, the general lifestyle of the people is that all of these people, they go on to get themselves entertained when they go on to meet at the chop hall, and then in this case they have a certain type of congregations in the village areas in the evening, and they go on to talk, and they go on to be speculating. It's all going to be based on speculation. They will always go on to speculate, and most of these times this speculation is going to be in a very, very negative sense. For example, you would have known it, that is, it is this speculation that prompted them to think that if they go on to take a vaccination that is for COVID, they will either go on to die or they will go on to become important, and consequently they never took these type of vaccines, and the results have been very, very visible. So you never know what type of a rumor will go on to get spread, and they will go on to speculate and speculate in such a manner which has no basis, but then that is their entertainment all in all. Of course, this is borne by, once again, the type of education that they go on to get, and so on and so forth. Moreover, they are going to be having economic and more properly the functional specialization. The word in this case is a specialization. And why is it that we are going to be fastidious about this word of specialization? Because it will go on to provide a specific type of function, and this specific type of function is going to be very, very different. Now, this function can go on to be associated with maybe provision of only services, maybe only computers, maybe only certain small amount of toy manufacturing. For example, you will come to know that there was a village in Karnataka near to Bengaluru that was called as Ramnagaram. That is where one of these films, Sholay, was shot. And there is one area that is going to be known for toy manufacturing. So, toy was going to be the most important component, and that is what determines its functional specialization also in this case. That is a part of it. Then towns don't going to be having industries that we are going to be talking about. They always don't going to be having industry. The industry means that is manufacturing essentially, but they go on to specialize in a particular type of activities what we're going to be talking about. That may be household. In case of India, that may be household. Maybe in case of France also, that is going to be sometimes a household activity. For example, if you have heard the name of Champagne, if you have heard the name of Burgundy, now these are some of these places where wine is manufactured, and that is a household activity. You're not going to find large industries, massive structures which will go on to house them, and that is a part of it. Of course, some of them can go on to be an overgrowth of small centers as well. For example, in this case, Tirupur is going to be one of them. Tirupur in Tamil Nadu, it has been part of clothing manufacturing. Tirupur. Ludhiana has been for the purpose of manufacturing of cycles, bicycles, and then you're going to find Shivakashi, which has been for explosive and printing as well. Most of this printing, it used to be at one point of time one of the largest printing centers in the whole of Asia, and of course explosives as well. Till of course some of these government policies deliberately try to destroy it to give advantage to China. You will be having this idea about this politics and whatever that has been played in this case. Then that is the second part is going to be a city. A city is going to be very, very different. And when we say that a city is different, this city is different from a town because it goes on to have a diversity of function. That means you will going to find a variety of type of functions in this place, not one, not two, and it is this diversity of function that goes on to make it very, very distinctive. And that means it will go on to have all the occupations, industries and services that will go on to be represented in this place. So function can go on to be, it can be an industrial center, it can be a service center, it can go on to be a transportation center, and it will go on to be, of course, because it goes on to be multifunctional, consequently it will go on, its size will also go on to be larger. We go on to say that cities are going to be much larger than towns and have a great number of economic functions, much larger than towns. That is, in terms of a spatial spread, they are going to be much more larger. Space-wise, they are larger. And when they're going to be talking about great number of economic functions, not only diversity, the functions also go on to be very, very specialized. In this case, it is this specialization that will go on to make them different at the same time. Moreover, they will going to have a tendency to have a transport termini. And when we are talking about transport terminus and transport termini, we are talking about a lot of other aspects as well. For example, because there will be a lot of people, these people will be moving because so many people cannot be fed with and so many people cannot sustain without having a spatial interaction. A spatial interaction means that is an interaction with something that is going to be outside in a space. Interaction in a space with some village areas, some other town, some other center, some other city, that is going to be a part of it. And that is why you have to have a transport termini. Termini, that means terminus is what we are going to be talking about. So it can go to be a big bus stand in this case. It can go on to be, of course, an airport in this case, and of course a lot of other aspects. So it goes on to be a major transport terminal. It will be having a financial institution. And why is it that we are going to be talking about financial institution? Because so many people will go on to live in this place. They will require to perform their economic functions, and finance is going to be required. So finance is going to be a part of it, and then administration is also going to be part. With so many people congregating, it cannot be administered unless you actually go on to be administering it. Really going to be administering it. And some of them will go on to combining cultural and entertainment functions as well. with so many people working throughout day and night to earn money, and they will require to entertain themselves, and this entertainment must go on to be a essential part of it. Without this type of entertainment, the people of the city will go on to become very, very stressed out, and if they go on to become stressed out, that will go on to start getting itself reflected in a variety of forms. So example, it will start getting itself reflected in the stress within the conflicts that will start taking place within the city area itself. So cities can go on to be again of different type. For example, some of these cities can go on to be called by the name of million cities. That is part of it. And when we go on to be talking about a million city is going to be housing millions of people. So these million cities can go on to be a political capital, they can be a commercial port, or they can be multifunction cities as well. Now political capitals can go on to be something like Mumbai. It is a political capital, commercial capital as well. It's a commercial port as well. And at the same time, it is multifunctional at the same time. So Mumbai is a prime example of everything. Of course, it's the capital of Maharashtra. If you can go on to pick up the case of Delhi, Delhi is a political capital, it is a multifunctional city. Of course, it's not a commercial port. Now, all of the million cities are noted for their very high level of industrial output. Now, industrial output means we are talking about all the farms that can be produced within the framework of what is called as the Western form of industrial growth. That means there will be a factory, and because this factory will go on to lead to a higher addition of the value, consequently these factories are going to be very, very significant. So million cities are going to be noted for their industrial output and internal commerce. That means that will go on to help them differentiate in this case here. Some of them may have been a capital some time back. For example, take the case of Rio de Janeiro. That used to be a capital some time back of Brazil. But then it is a million city all in all. Some of them used to be capital. Agra used to be a capital of India at one point of a time. Patna used to be a major city. Of course, it was deliberately allowed to get itself declined, and that was the ploy of the Britishers in this case, so that India remains backward and it remains a slave as it has been. And of course, we are all slaves largely because in India we are talking about something that is not our own language, and that is a slave mentality all in all. So some of them used to be capital and they retain their characteristics as well. For example, Mysuru had been a capital, it retains its characteristics, it retains its prestige as well. That's important. Prestige is significant. Patna may have lost its prestige. Agra may have lost its prestige, but some of these centers like Mysuru has been able to retain this type of a prestige and of course character as well. And this is largely because of a millennia of influences that can go on to take place which will allow it to lose its character. That can happen, and that has been happening as well. Now, all of these urban settlements, we are talking about million cities. The million cities are going to be very, very accessible. And why is it that we are going to be talking about that they are going to be very accessible? They are accessible because unless they are accessible, how is it that they can go and allow so many people to move? Imagine million people living in a place. They must go on to move. They must go on to have interaction of one place with another place with another place. Without this interaction, it will go on to become completely dead. Consequently, they are going to be very, very navigable regions. Sometimes on the rivers, sometimes on the lakes. You are going to find a city like Michigan in the United States that is going to be on a lake. Good number of rivers in India have been on a rivers. Allahabad, Prayagraj, that has been on a river. It has been a part of it, right? In a similar manner, most of these rivers, because India had been a civilization. I repeat, India had been a civilization. That means it had been. So that means there have been navigable rivers, and most of the cities were located here. You're going to find that Delhi was on a navigable river, and to such an extent that there were certain type of markets that were named after these navigable rivers. For example, Darya Ganj in Delhi. Darya means that was a river. Ganj means a market. That was the name of a market. That means a market that was on the banks of the river. Of course, since then, what happened was the river shifted its course, or maybe that there were a lot of areas that were required, and now it is going to be at least some 2 to 3 kilometers away from the river. But at one point of a time, it lay right on the river. And a good number of them are going to be in industrialized or agricultural regions. And when we are going to be talking about industrialized or rich agricultural regions, it is this rich agricultural region that is responsible for giving them some amount of commerce. Patna, for example, is in the midst of an agricultural region. Prayagraj in the midst of an agricultural region. Lucknow was almost the same. Most of the cities that have evolved in the Gangetic Plain, they are part of it. Moreover, certain high proportions of the total population, irrespective of their countries. For example, most of they going to contain high proportion, and they are bound to be. You can go to find the capital of Chile, that is Santiago, find Copenhagen as well, that is Denmark, Paris for France, Vienna, Tokyo, Copenhagen, Buenos Aires, all of them. That means wherever they may be, maybe that the number of people living in that region is going to be low, but all in all, some of these type of million cities will go on to house a larger number of people, and the population will also be larger in this case. Now, having talked about all of them, differentiated a town from a city. And as we talked about, that is a town is going to be different, a city is going to be completely different, and this city will go on to be having certain type of characteristic, and then will specialization as well, and that is going to become million cities at the same time as well. You will understand and you will imagine that such type of centers go on to be associated with a very, very niche function. That means one type of activity, which is what we go on to be calling it as functional specialization. They are going to be determined by, they can be either an industrial center or a transport center or an entertainment center or an education center. So that is the way that they are going to behave, and when they are going to behave in such a manner, we are going to be calling it as a functional specialization. So they are classified from one place to another place functionally, from one region to another region. Now understand that a city has a cosmopolitan population, and when we are going to be talking about it has a cosmopolitan population, that means the people living in the city, they are not carried away by the so-called caste, creed, religion of the person. Now all of these words, mind it, is taken in a Western context, not in Indian context at all. This is largely because the Indian context is not included in your syllabus. And why is it that I keep on repeating it is because, take the case of caste. Caste is a word that has never ever been used in India at all. There has never been any caste at all, except for the fact that when British inserted it for the purpose of dividing the country. It is not the same as Varnashram. Varnashram has been different, caste has been different. Caste is a German word that had been inserted deliberately for the purpose of dividing the people. So, people who are going to be caste conscious, they are slaves essentially, largely because they still go on to adhere to the British colonial mindset that was imprinted on them, that was imposed on them. That is one. So, that's going to be one component of it. So, they are not taken by caste, creed, region or religion of that person. You do not go on to see someone down upon. For example, India is perhaps the only country that has classified people on the basis of whether they can be looked down upon or not, calling them as Dalits or SC or STs. They all belong to one faith, but then some of the time the state can go on to have a role in dividing the people as well. that issue apart. That is not a point of a discussion in this case, but we are going to be talking about that it will go on to be having a cosmopolitan population. For example, someone who is following a Christian faith, someone who happens to be maybe even a terrorist as well, who is going to be, but you will be generally not taken aback by that aspect. Someone will going to have a lot of deep hatred towards you, but then being a cosmopolitan person, you will go on to say, well, right now he is not having any hatred, he will go on to have a hatred when he will try to show it. That is cosmopolitan. But in general, cosmopolitan means that is you are very objective, you are in a Western sense, you are sophisticated, suave, and even if it is that there is someone who goes on to have a hatred, deep-seated hatred inside it, you will go on to say, well, this is something part will that different, let's enjoy that part in this case. That is going to be one part, and of course it goes on to perform a multifunctional role. That is a component of it. These are some of these cities can go on to dominate some of these centers. This is largely because we are going to be talking about domination of one of these cities, single function dominated. And how is it going to be? They can be either manufacturing, they can be administrative as well. That is going to be a specialization dominated by one type of a function. All of these cities are otherwise dynamic. Their primary function can go on to change. For example, the primary function of Delhi was administrative, but now it is one of these largest software exporters. For example, Bengaluru at one point of a time used to be a garden city. Garden city largely because it had a very good vegetative cover. The people we used to be very, very nice. The city was very, very, very livable. That has been a part of it. And now Bengaluru has a lot of manufacturing center as well. It has a lot of IT hub as well in this case. That means its function have been changing. Bengaluru doesn't going to perform the same function it used to be performing some time back. Now people used to throng to Bengaluru, and they have thronged to Bengaluru essentially because they wanted its climatic condition to be very, very conducive. And most of the people who have been there essentially on the ploy of enjoying its climatic condition, they have not seen how good Bengaluru used to be at one point of a time, because they have not seen the grandeur of the climate of Bengaluru at any point of a time. So cities can be classified on the basis of their dominant function. They can be administrative, they can be commercial, they can be industrial, they can be entertainment. And without it, the city doesn't going to be having any identity. The second part is all the city going to be having a structure as well at the same time. And when we are going to be talking about a structure, that means that we are essentially going to be concentrating on aspects like what we going to be talking of the center of the city. How is it that the city goes on to be spreading, which are the people which are living in residential area, where are these residential areas, where are the entertainment centers as well. So this is all going to be part of the city structure. And once you understand it, that is every city goes on to be having a cultural entity. Every city is different, every city is unique, every city is exceptional, extraordinary as well, and there is no way that there can be two cities which are going to be alike. Although sometimes they can be associated with two different type of cities as well. We are talking about the city structure and we are going to be talking about that such type of entity. So maybe that two cities can be similar with respect to the type of structure that they have. That means structurally they can be same. That means by structurally they are going to be same. That by that we go on to mean that all of these cities will go on to be very, very different from each other. Every city in general, the Western cities particularly, they will go on to have what we are going to be calling it as a central area, that is a CBD, where the buildings would be very, very large, very, very high. And why high? Because the cost of the land in this case used to be high. Surrounding it is going to be another area, this is going to be another area. Most of the time in the Western countries, these centers are going to be occupied by people who are going to be poor. And why poor? Because it is these people who will going to provide services to the city center, the CBD that we're going to be calling it. That's the name we are going to be talking about. That's the name that we think of using. So let's say it's like that the city center will going to require someone like a guard, someone to clean the floor, someone to do certain other activities as well, and that is how the CBD goes on to behave in this case. That's one component. The third is that is surrounding it is going to be certain type of housing. Now this is going to be maybe middle class housing here. Then surrounding it is going to be an upper middle class housing. This is going to be an upper middle class housing, and then surrounding is going to be the highest class housing. You will going to find that every house in this case, all of these sections are going to be very, very different. These houses are going to be isolated. They are almost going to be almost like that of farmhouses. They are going to be completely isolated in this case. And these are the places which the people will going to use it for the purpose of not only entertainment, for leisure. Now most of these people will going to find that the city center is going to be at a far distance, but then that will not go on to drowse their curiosity or drowse their travel towards it, because they are endowed with a very, very good transportation facility. Not only transportation, communication facility as well at the same time. And with this type of a communication, you will imagine that such a communication like what you're going to be having it in the form of one of them can go on to be telephone, the other of them is going to be internet. Now all of these forms will go on to play a major role, and with something like a mobile in your hand, you will going to find that the entire office is going to be with you. One mobile in your hand and you will going to find that the whole office goes on to be functioning in your hands, and you just have to give orders from that place. So a city center all in all will go on to be comprising of several sections, and this section will go on to made of first of them is going to be a city center that we talked about. In Western terminology, it is going to be called as a CBD. Of course, it is going to be called by a different name. The second is a structured hierarchical residential area. Now, why is it that we're going to be calling it as hierarchical residential area? Because some so-called high-class people, economically high-class people, and that is again a Western classification. In India, there has never been classification of the people on the basis of their so-called stature. So everyone was given a different type of a task, everyone given different function, and everyone used to be playing a much greater role. So everyone was indispensable. Of course, this is one history that has been completely distorted in convent education, and of course by all of the pro-British writers who wrote the history of India. But then such type of a hierarchy has been only in Western countries, and this hierarchy means a high-class residential area. What is high? I mean, is it that you can think of it, is it that the people who are going to be high class, they will going to have larger amount of money? Now that can be even earned by Dawood Ibrahim as well. Is it that people who are high class because they have greater amount of a power which they can go to misuse? Now they don't have a character, all people who used to be doing it so. Now is it that people who go on to be having a vast amount of a knowledge, but then they may be shorn of certain type of values, although that looks a bit difficult and different. So such type of a hierarchical means we are talking about income and only income. We don't have to be talking about a cultural aspect in this case, and this is something that you will have to take care of, because by the time you go on to be giving this examination, maybe 2-3 years, a lot of concept with respect to how is it that the Indian people are perceived and they are seen, that may go on to go for some amount of a change. It will definitely go on to be having a commercial center. And why is it that so? Because commerce is the lifeline of the cities. Without this type of a function, there is no way that the city can go to exist, that can go to function also. And industrial zone, manufacturing, in order to serve the city, you will require a manufacturing. And if you have a manufacturing center, then who will go to work in the manufacturing centers? The laborers who will go to work. So that is going to be surrounded by, as you can go to find, low cost housing. and also a slum population. Now that goes on to be significant. Low cost housing, because this is where the laborers will live. This is where the people with a low income will go on to live, and a slum population. And because the people will start living in a small area which goes on to house a large number of population, and there is so much amount of strain on the infrastructure facilities that the place degenerates into a slum. And then the city will go on to be distinctly away from the rural area. Now, because it is going to be away from the rural area, it will go to lead to development of a distinct fringe. Fringe, that means a transitional zone between the city and that of the rural area. That is why it is called as a rural-urban fringe. Now, this is where it goes on to make it different. And as you can go on to understand it, in this case, you will go on to find that this place, the center of it is going to be the city center. And these are residential areas. These are all going to be the farmhouses. That is where the people, high class people, as they're going to be calling it, they're going to be living in those areas and living in those zones. You will also going to find that these are the places which are going to be good residential qualities, and some of these areas will go on to be housing some industry. This may be some of those areas that will go on to be housing this part. This is a typical structure of an urban area that is going to be seen here. Other than that, there is besides, depending on the industrial evolution of the city, some other centers have no parallel anywhere in the world, and they may also come up, because we are going to be talking about how is it that the cities have evolved. We are talking about depending on the historical evolution of the city. Some other centers will go on to have evolved, and there will be no parallel. Parallel, that means they will be completely different. Not that you can go on to classify and then you can go on to have a stereotyped image of a city structure that will be same everywhere. That's not always going to be. So consequently, all the cities are going to be different from each other in this case. So the one part of a city is going to be central business city. That is in the center of the city. Now, as it is going to be, that is, it's the heart of city. This was a term that had been coined by Americans to denote the central part of the city. And Americans themselves go on to be calling it by a variety of names. CBD is a name that has been given by the British. Of course, it was a concept that was coined by the Americans. And Americans go on to be using a different type of wording altogether, downtown. So they prefer to call it as downtown Atlanta, downtown New York, downtown San Francisco, Los Angeles, and so on and so forth. But in whole of geography, right now the word is going to be almost synonymous with the nucleus of the urban area, that is the center, that is the central part of the urban area. The CBD is the commercial capital of the whole of the city. I am using the word capital. It's the commercial hub. It's the commercial node. It's not only commercial, it's commercial, social, as well as civic. It is going to be a combination of all of them. And it is characteristically the most accessible part of the town and city, and it's a hinterland. Largely because everyone must go to come to that place. And why is it that we're going to be saying it so? That is, the roads must go on to be very, very wide, so as to bring the highest number of people to the city center. That we're going to be calling it by the name of the CBD. So the roads generally that go on to lead to it, if it is going to be properly designed. For example, Indian city structures and Indian cities have not been properly designed, largely because they have been built with not that much amount of a projection of population that we have right now in the whole of the Indian cities. That was never imagined, and consequently the central part of the city is always going to be thriving with certain degree of problems. It is these problems that go on to characterize the city rather than being a place which can go on to be enjoyable as well. This city center is going to be called by different names in different countries. As we talked about, it's going to be called by the name of, in the United States, it's going to be chalk in some places, and of course it is going to be a spine. That is going to be a different name. Now imagine chalk. Chalk is one place where a lot of pathways going to converge. A spine is a completely different type of a name. We are not in a position to imagine that a spine, but then it's not a specialized topic for it. The name, alternative name for it is going to be square in some place like Russia, and also in the communist world, China as well. For example, Red Square in Russia, Tiananmen Square, which has been so much in news in some place like that of China. That is the name of a square, and a square is a large open area that is characterizing the central city. If we can go on to take a look at the city center of New York with tall buildings, the city center of India, which is going to be very, very congested with shops and everything in that place, like Chandni Chowk, like Charminar region, that is going to be Chowk. Chandni Chowk is the Chowk, Charminar is a Chowk, Godoliya in Varanasi is a Chowk, that is what exactly is the traditional city. And of course, all of these planned city going to be on Western style CBD. We are adopting everything Western, as if that is the panacea for all ills. And even Corona has not taught us how is it that that can go on to be detrimental to the life and living of the people as well. A square in comparison is going to be completely open area. Now, other than CBD, CBD is going to be the central part of the city, and other than the CBD is going to be a residential area. Now, residential areas are going to be completely different. These residential areas of different cities are differently arranged, and when we say they are differently arranged, that means in some places you will go on to find that the cities are arranged in such a manner that the people who have a higher economic value, that means people having a higher amount of an income, they go on to be living in the central part of the city. People who are going to be having a middle income, they are going to be living somewhere else, and so on and so forth. For example, some time back, most of the people in India used to be living in the central part of the city, and the highest class used to be living in the central part of the city. Why? Because the central part of the city was a place where there was a palace, where there was a temple, where there was a worship place as well, where there were a lot of shops, where there was some degree of power, prestige and proximity. All of three were available in the central part of the city. Western countries are going to be completely different. So in some of these more affluent cities, the high class residential areas moves away from the city. They don't want to live near to the city. So Indian psyche, traditional people, most of these, India had just gained independence 75 years back, and the western part of the city has been very, very different. Western central part is from that of the Indian cities. The traditional cities have affluent population is what we're going to be talking about, and that goes on to be the characteristic of it. While some of those people in Western countries, they move away largely because they want to live near to the nature. This is a strange contradiction. That is, they destroy the villages and then they go on to find themselves to live near to the villages. Now, this is a type of a psyche that you can hardly go on to understand or imagine in this manner. But then that is a part of it. So there are two components of city structure. One of them is CBD. The second is going to be the residential areas. The pattern for all of it is going to be very, very different. That means what exactly is the type of a pattern of living of these people in a city region, residential area, is going to be completely different in different places. For example, there is a general tendency of the elite class moving away from the city, as we have talked about. The high income group live in a different social setting. And the social setting is that they are very secluded. They will go on to have their own farmhouses. They will go on to have their own, they go on to be having their own amenities, everything within their farmhouses itself. And then when we are going to be talking about different identities, now different identities in the city, that means a city is made of different groups. And if you can go on to pick it up, different identities, that means it can be a caste. Of course, caste is a very, very derogatory word, and as we talked about, that is, it was a word that was inserted by the British to divide Indian population. Indian people still remain divided in that form. Tribe is also a very derogatory word, but then for the purpose of writing it, for the purpose of understanding it, we are using these words. It's preferable to be calling them as identities. So different identities going to live in the city and they go on to show certain type of a different pattern. This example, but then it's essential to be talking about a certain type of caste. For example, the so-called Brahmin group will go on to live where the kings used to be living. They do not go on to live closer to the places where the people who go on to work daily, they will go on to live. Such type of an income differentiation has started existing in Indian cities right now, and then this income differentiation goes on to be very, very marked. Caste also structure is going to be very marked, as you will go on to find it. That is, some high caste people will go on to live in one place, another class will go on to generally go on to live in another place of sorts. That is one. Second is that this shows a certain degree of a residential segregation. That means they are residentially segregated as well. And such type of residential segregation is because they always try to live in an environment which they can go on to call it as a one in which they have a high degree of affinity, and that is the basic reason that we are going to be calling it as affinity environment. Affinity environment, that means you go on to be having your own type of a condition where you go on to find yourself much more comfortable. That means the environment in which you go on to be feeling comfortable. That means, and that comfort feeling will be different from for one of those castes, one of those identities who have evolved a particular type of a lifestyle. For example, you will go on to find that most of these good number of Islamic invaders who have settled in India, they're going to live in one part of the city, and their residential areas are going to be very, very dilapidated, very, very dirty, and they have a strategic reason for allowing themselves to live in that region, largely because you will go on to find it very dangerous to visit these places also. For normal population, visit means they may go on to lose their life as well at the same time. So this is one type of environment. You will go on to find that some low class residential people, that means low class means in terms of income, they will go on to live in a real dilapidated sense. And that is, you just go on to take a look at this. Just look at it. That is such a high density of dwelling concentration, and that is an example of Mumbai. In contrast, take a look at here. That is, it is going to be a real high class, and of course, this doesn't going to belong to India, and it is a real high class in the sense that is, you have open space. Living is a fun in those regions and in these areas. But at the same time, you will also going to understand that a lot of these things are going to get themselves defined in India. And when we say that they're going to get themselves defined in India, that is because of some reason. And the reason is going to be, of course, associated with the culture of the people, the way that the people have belonged, and also that so much amount of a mixture and contradictions have taken place because of the impact of the invaders and because of the impact of the colonial mindset, both of them. So there have been two of them. Some of these invaders who came to India in the 10th century and 12th century, they settled in this place, and then some colonizers came and they also went on to introduce certain elements in this case. So that is the dominant facet of colonized world's countries. Urban growth is going to be very different. Now, why is it going to be very different? This is because when the slums, that is going to be the third element. We have talked about the central business district. Second has been the residential areas. Residential areas going to show certain marked concentration. Now, the elite people going to be living in certain type of place, and then one of these group of people are going to be called by the name of squatter settlements. The squatter settlements are those type of settlements which are dilapidated, which are dirty, which are going to be shanty, and this is the dominant facet of the colonized world. And when we are going to be talking about that type of facet, this shows a characteristic. This characteristic is going to be, first is a concentration of makeshift dwellings, like the type of dwellings that you're going to see here. These are going to be all makeshift. All of these are going to be makeshift dwellings in this case. And when we are going to be talking about they being a makeshift dwelling, you can understand that is they can be blown by wind. All of these can be blown by winds at any point of time. You see the type of a dirt, that this is where the people go to live, as if this is one of the most inhuman conditions one can go to live. Most of them going to lie on the edge of the city, and also that is this is the where they also going to be occupying a public or the private land which is neither owned by the builder, maybe the government. Of course the government goes on to own it, but they have not been occupied the builders or by the occupants in this case. Squatting means that is you sit on the road. It's called as squatting. So some of those type of settlements which people go to develop for the purpose of living anywhere, a makeshift arrangement is going to be called as squatter settlement. And then when the number of people living in the squatter settlements goes on to increase, it is this type of settlement that goes on to get degenerated into slums at a later date. That is going to be the third type of characteristic and characterization associated with a squatter settlement. But then squatter settlements characteristics keep on increasing. Most of the occupants of the squatter settlements are urban poor. When we say they are urban poor, then these are the people who go on to be coming to the city for the purpose of some amount of work. And when anyone has come for the work for the first time, where is it that they will go on to find? Where exactly is it that they will go on to find themselves living in these regions? Nowhere. Consequently, what will go on to happen is their inability to find a place for themselves, they will go on to start congregating, and then these congregations will go on to become so ugly at one point of a time that they will go on to generate themselves into something like a slum. It is this type of a slum that we go on to be calling it by the name of shanty towns in some of these countries or in some of these places. These shanty towns, this is what we are going to be calling it, shanty town or slum. And they are going to be in Peru, they are going to be in India as well, they are going to be in some places like Manila as well, everywhere in the world. They are going to be in Mumbai as well. In Mumbai, they are going to be called by the name of Jhopalpatti. In Delhi, they are going to be called by the name of Juggi Jhopadi. Of course, the government has worked to an extent essentially to give a different type of a residential area to these Juggi Jhopadis, and they are going to be called more in an elite manner like Juggi Jhopadi Colony, JJ Colony, and that looks in your language very cool. Now that is going to be another part, and then you're going to find it in Kenya as well. They are going to be all spread over in different parts of the city and different parts of the region as well. That's where we're going to be talking of it's a characteristic. So it's a substandard housing. It's an area of a substandard housing here. And of course, squatters, first people come, they're going to squat in this place. After they have squatted, then there is a great amount of a concentration. Once the concentration goes on to increase, that goes on to degenerate itself into certain type of slums in the region. Thereafter, these segments are going to be having certain degree of characteristics. For example, one of them is going to be that they are going to be substandard, very, very crowded, and they are going to be made of unemployed immigrants, unemployed migrants who are looking for certain type of a job and who cannot go on to find a job for themselves in such an easy manner. You'll go on to find their look. How is it that they can go on to look like? This is one example that you can go on to find it from India. This is another example from Mumbai, and you can go on to find dirt, filth spread all over in this case. Now, such type of shanty settlements or slums have essentially evolved because the formal housing market has not been able to cope up with the rate of increase of the population, particularly migration to the urban areas. It has not been responsible for doing it so, and that is why it has happened in this case as well. And this keeps on happening, and they will keep on happening because the rural to urban migration will keep on increasing, and most of these settlements come up because migration is taking place. So migration takes place, and as migration takes place, most of these settlements will going to come up near to the fringe part of the city, which no one occupies. So they will come up near to the fringe part of the city. What they will going to do is that some of these vacant lands they will going to occupy. Now they have occupied that vacant land. Now after having occupied it, these areas can go into be steep slopes, they can be prone to flooding as well, and they have been generally avoided for the purpose of construction of any type. So one person has settled and they're going to live in a real pitiable condition. You are taking a look at it behind me, and what exactly is the type of living these people will be having? Most inhuman conditions under which they go on to live here. Even sometimes that the sewers passes between their own house as well, dividing a room. Forget about anything else that goes on dividing a room. Flooding can go to take place. Any type of a problem that you can imagine that is going to be associated with these areas. But then at least they have gone on to become almost an essential element of any urban area. The quality of dwellings, that means the quality of housing in such type of shanty settlements is actually very rudimentary. And when we say it is going to be very rudimentary, we are all in all talking about that is they will go on to use every type of a material possible. That is asbestos sheets, certain type of cardboards, anything available anywhere, some amount of bricks, some amount of stones, and so on and so forth. And then there is in such type of condition, do you imagine that they will be able to have certain type of public services, public amenities like clean toilets and things like that? Answer is of course no. And this was one of the reasons why Prime Minister Modi has been responsible for has been on a cleaning spree of both rural areas as well as urban areas. That was the basic reason, because these people can go on to, if they go on to fall sick, if they can go on to be one type of people who can actually go on to spread out a lot of diseases and certain type of viral diseases like COVID-19 as well. The roads are going to be unpaved in this space, and of course everything is crude in the sense, for example, there will be no water facility. So how is it that they will be actually drinking water? It's like a water pipe that is going to be supplying let's say Delhi or Mumbai water. They will drill a hole in it, and once they have been able to drill a hole, the water will start gushing out in the form of a fountain. Of course electricity is not going to be available, so what they will going to do is they will going to hook a electric wire, and they are intelligent enough in this case that is how they will going to get their electricity as well. So this is the way that they try to live in these type of places, and of course it's not going to be very good living condition also. Such type of slums are known by different names in different places. For example, barracas, barrios, badidas, all of these are going to be Latin America. Then you're going to find it happening in Brazil as well, favela. You're going to find it taking place in Argentina as well, Southeast Asia as well. Where not is it that these are going to be available? These slums of course are going to be judged on the basis of a subjective criteria. It's a slum culture, and culturally they go on to be very, very different in terms of their attitude, in terms of their outlook, and of course they are very united among themselves. Socially, as we say, slums tend to be isolated from the remainder of the population, from the remainder of the urban society, and they do go on to exhibit some pathological social symptoms like alcoholism is very rampant, also drug abuse is going to be very rampant, illicit relationship is going to be very, very rampant, deviant behavior, that means you do not go on to find people who will be decent enough in this space. All of them will be, as you can go to say, the ill manner of the highest quality, It's only some people who can go on to get themselves out of it, but then this is the way that they have evolved in this region. And why is it so? It has been so. This has been largely because without these type of characteristics, without being rude, without being very, very inhuman, there is no way that they can go on to survive living in a slum as well. So These slums and shanty towns are, as we say, that is, they can be identified on the basis of certain type of subjective criteria. For example, one of these criteria can be a subculture. Then, of course, the other can go on to be associated with overpriced goods. They, of course, as we talked about, they go on to exhibit some pathological social symptoms in this case. So, an urban area will go to comprise of a CBD. It will go to comprise of a residential area. It will go to also comprise of slums, and we have devoted a good amount of time on slums and also the space as well. Away from that, you will go on to find what we are going to be calling it as a fringe. Fringe is that is one area that goes on to be lying on the periphery of the urban area. So, because it goes on to lie on the periphery of the urban area, that's the basic reason that they are going to be called by the name of rural urban fringe. And this rural urban fringe is going to be very, very different. It will going to be having half the characteristic of the urban area, half the characteristic of the rural area. And that's why we say that it's an area of a frontier or discontinuity between the city and the countryside. So, it's a fringe. Fringe, that means comprising of half of them. It is this rural and urban area that the land use is going to be mixed, that is intermixed. That's going to be the catchword in this case. And why it has to be mixed? It has to be mixed only because of one reason. That is, it is a continuum. That is neither rural nor it is going to be completely urban in nature as well. And that is what goes on to make it completely different. These fringe areas will go on to have certain type of characteristic. Now, the characteristic in this case is going to be very, very different, as you can go on to understand it. If this is going to be the city, this is going to be city, this is going to be an agricultural area, rural area. The continuum between both of them is what is going to be called as a fringe. So, that is the urban pressure. This is the main city, this is the rural area, and this is the fringe area, that means the transitional zone. It will go on to have agricultural land, it will go on to have a indigenous irrigation system, everything will be indigenous. And it is in these regions that most of them will start getting themselves mixed up. And that's the way. In India, as we say, that is in India, such type of a phenomena has been very, very recent. Recent, that means India never used to be having issues like urban areas used to be dilapidated till about the 15th century also even. That means something like some even many invasions from the Muslim world that had taken place, and the Islamic world has also not been able to destroy a lot of characteristics and the grandeur of the city, despite a lot of wealth used to be looted from the country. It was from 15th century onwards when the Muslim rulers completely entrenched themselves into the country, a lot of degeneration started. Degeneration was in terms of the values of the people, degeneration was in terms of living conditions of the people, degeneration was in terms of outlook of the people, and of course they were invaders. They never had any type of a personality or character. You can always go to imagine so. So the degeneration started. And then a lot of degeneration with respect to urban regions also went on to start. And that was complete once the British sowed the seeds of cunningness in the Indian population. And once that was there, then the personality transformation and the character transformation of the people was completely complete. After independence, the government never took note of it. And because they have never taken a note of it, consequently, this is one part that has kept on increasing. As we say, that is the post-independence period have caused some degree of a radical transformation of the population. Why? Because the aim of the British was to allow the Indian cities to become an island. Now, because the British allowed it to be an island, then island of growth, island of money, not culture or values. Consequently, the people who were living in the rural areas, and of course they simultaneously allowed the rural areas to collapse and rural areas to become degraded as well. Now, this was of course with the consent of the Indian people, and one can imagine that only 11,000 people were able to rule over 21 crore people, and this is something that you can go on to know. It couldn't have happened without the complicity, compliance, and the manipulation of the Indian mindset, because their minds were poisoned and they were able to do it. So still we're going to say that we are having that colonial mindset, and we think exactly in the same manner which the Western countries want us to think. So the big cities started developing these type of slums in the post-independence area, and it started developing because of two factors. One was that was going to be caused by what we're going to be seeing here is spilling. That was going to be one factor, spilling over the adjoining rural area. That was one. That means as the city population went on to increase, the main urban center spilled over this population to the adjoining regions. That was one. Second was that is there were a lot of migrants also. That means these migrants came and they also lived in the fringe part of the city. Now, when both of them started living in the fringe part of the city, it was, of course, accompanied by a plethora of problems. So, the land use went for a 6 in this case. There was inadequate urban amenities that were available in this place also, and of course, it was accompanied by a severe law and order problem also at the same time. That has been the other element. We talked about the structure of the urban area. So the structure comprises of one, the CBD, the second was residential area, third was going to be the slum, the fourth has been fringe area, the fifth is all in all going to be the urban sprawl. Now, urban sprawl, as the word goes on to denote, that is, it goes on to be a word that goes on to be denoting it and talking about it. Urban sprawl is an area that has a lot of sprawling places. Sprawl, that is what we're going to be talking of. That means one of the portions of urban area that is going to be very, very sprawling, that is very expansive, that is going to be called as urban sprawl. Now, some time back we talked about that there is a tendency of the people to move away from the city center and live close to that of the peripheral part of the city. When they go on to move towards the peripheral part of the city, they lead to the development of that type of a sprawl, and that is what it means. Now you can go on to take a look at it. This is going to be a sprawling region. A sprawling, that means you will go on to find there is so much amount of greenery, and in between these places, and the lifestyle is fabulous in this region, in the sense that is lifestyle, not life. Both of them are different. So lifestyle fabulous because you have wide roads, clean roads, a good amount of spacing between the dwellings. All of these are going to be very, very different from each other. As you can go on to find it, these are going to be the dwellings, a lot of open space. You can go on to relax. It is almost going to be like in a perpetual resort, almost like that. So urban sprawl is the physical pattern of urban expansion, where large urban areas under market condition move toward the surrounding agricultural area. This sprawl lies, as we are going to say, that is in advance of the principal lines of urban growth, and it can also go on to imply planning control. That means that means that the government is able to plan something. And let's say a government goes into plan, that is away from the fringe area, or maybe in the fringe area, will go on to plan a new township. So it will go on to move towards those areas. So it will go on to imply a government policy also in this case, and it can go on to be, it may not be a government policy also. For example, it may also happen that there are some builders who have taken a good piece of land and they have developed a complete area without any government intervention, only allowing certain type of maps to be passed. At least this is something that can happen in Indian condition and Indian case also. So that goes on to take place. Consequently, if this happens, then the development is going to be patchy. As we say that in this case, the development is going to be patchy. That's one. Scattered and strung out, both of them. When we say that the development is going to be patchy, that means it's going to be only in some form, like it can be this place that can go to develop, it can be this place that can go to develop, it can this place, and in between it will be a complete rural area. That means if we can go on to understand it, it may be a complete urban area. This is a place which can be an urban area. All in all, this can be an urban area, and beyond that, it is going to be a sprawl. So one place will be sprawl, another place will be sprawl, still another place will be a sprawl. So the development in this place can go on to be patchy. In between, there can go on to be an intervening rural area as well. So this is a possibility. And what it will go on to do is that it will go on to leave a certain type of agriculture enclaves. That means in between there will be some type of enclaves that will be left. That means all of a sudden you are moving on a road. This is going to be a road. This is a road going to be connecting it. This is going to be another road that will be connecting it. And in between agricultural area, and all of a sudden you're going to find a fabulous urban development area. When these roads go on to develop in this manner, and what happens is these roads go on to become developed, and on both the sides of it, it is going to be a linear manner. That is going to be called by the name of ribbon development. That is the name that is going to be given to it. Ribbon development. That's the name that is going to be given to it. And also, as we say, there is leapfrog development. Leapfrog is sprawl. Leapfrog, that means that's the possibility that something else can go on to happen. And what can go on to happen? That is, other than this place, you can go to imagine it. If this is going to be an urban area, the main urban area, then one place can be this one that can develop, this can be another one, this can another one, this can another one, this can another one, that will go to leave everything very patchy, and one of these segments can go on to be connected to a roadway, which will be called by the name of ribbon development. That means linear development of sorts. These places have to be very well connected because of two reasons. First is that the people who go on to be owning this sprawl or living in this sprawl, they are going to be of a real high income people. They real high income people, and they can go on to have a individual ownership of vehicles, not public transportation. And let's say if this distance is going to be 20 kilometers, it takes only 10 minutes, maximum of 10 minutes, when you are covering that distance at a speed of 120 kilometers per hour in your car. That is only 10 minutes in this case. So it is not going to be too inaccessible. That is reason number one. That's why it goes on to develop in this place also. And of course, the present technology, of course, internet and other things, that has been aiding it, and that has aided it all in all. Now, these sprawls, of course, go on to be having a lot of attractions. And when we say that they're going to be having a lot of attraction, that means a completely different thing. Now, these attractions can go on to be, first is, that is, these are the regions that will go on to allow this sprawl to develop. And one of them can go on to be development of transport and communication. Transport and communication is very, very well developed in these areas. And when we say that going to be very well developed in these regions, it can go on to be 6-lane road, 8-lane road that is going to be connecting the main urban area with certain type of small sprawls. That is going to be one. Second is, who are the people who are going to occupy this sprawl? People whose family size goes on to be increasing. Let's take it this way. Let's take it this way. That is, essentially, initially, most of the people go on to be living in the central part of the city. Now, when they go on to live in the central part of the city, they are going to be single. Then they go on to be having a girlfriend. Possibly, they will go on to move towards a good place to give respect to their girlfriend. If they go on to get married to it, which is rare, then what they will go on to do is, they will go on to pick up even a better place, a bigger place. And if, God forbid, they go on to be having children, then what will happen is then the size of the dwellings will go on to increase. And then their children will start growing. So sometime maybe the brother and sister used to be living in a single room. After some time, the size of the family goes on to increase. The brothers will go on to occupy a different room. The sisters will go on to occupy a different room. And because they both of them go on to occupy in a different room, of course, the size will go on to increase further. And after maybe when the family is well established, they have some amount of income, and of course, it also happens that the male earning member, in this case, or the female earning member, both of these earning members, they have enough amount of money. What they're going to do is that they try to find a sprawling place where they can lead at least beyond 50-55 age group. They can go to lead a very, very good life. And that is what it is. That means increase in the family size. So there is a growing demand for more open space in this case. Because there is a growing demand for open space, they will go to require an independent dwelling rather than a shared apartment. This is going to be another component of it, independent dwelling. And when you have an independent dwelling, you have a lawn in front of your house. Of course, your lifestyle is very different. That means that's a lead to a very distinctive lifestyle. You can go on to live in your farmhouse and you can go to move around in your shorts. You can go to move around your Bermuda. Maybe if there are girls, they can go to move around in bikini as well, because they have their own swimming pool in this place, own pond, and sometimes own river also. And this is essentially a lifestyle change, largely because we say that is, people who are going to be fed up with the urban life, they are the one who will go on to follow this type of a lifestyle. And it's very peaceful, it's very environmental friendly as well, and that is what happens. Now, you can go to see what we have been talking about slums, that is, this is going to be the main urban area, that is going to be the main urban area, and then these are going to be the rural areas. And away from this, this is where exactly you will go to find a new urban place. So this is how the sprawl starts developing, and the sprawl development in India is of a very recent example. And why is it that it's a recent example? Because it has started only with a complete acquisition of a new type of lifestyle. A lifestyle that is going to be in Mumbai, Bengaluru, Delhi, Chennai, where the people have started living close to that of farmhouses. So a city structure goes on to comprise of so many of these type of farms. And that goes on to make a city. One city goes on to be comprising so many of them. And then this city gets itself separated from the adjoining regions, maybe with the help of a green belt. It is this green belt that goes on to separate the main city. And how is it that it goes on to get separated? Green belts can be and cannot be a part of the city structure. Now, when we say that they cannot be a part of a city structure, it means that the city structure will go on to comprise of essentially all those components that we discussed. That means beginning from CBD to the residential area, and then to the slums, and then to, of course, the rural urban fringe and urban sprawl, 5 of them, from the city to the periphery. Green belts are different because they are responsible most often for dividing the entire of the city from the rest of the area. It can be perceived as, and we are using this word perceived as, forming a barrier between the city and the adjoining areas with the help of a belt that is going to be forested, that is of course going to be green. But it can go on to be incorporated as a part of a city design as well, city layout as well. Now, one understanding will go on to make it very, very clear in this case. Now, green belts are always going to be in use for one or the other reason, largely because whether it is going to be Mangaluru, whether it is going to be RA forests of Mumbai, whether it goes on to be Delhi, Aravalli deforestation, any one of them, there is always going to be some amount of and some type of a problem being faced by the green belts. And when we talk about the problems being faced by the green belts, we are essentially talking about that is deforestation taking place or some type of illegal activities taking place. So it's a very right topic for a question to be formed in this case. Now we are deliberately not talking about the questions, largely because the concentration is mostly on the discussion of the chapter and its components. But then the questions will be at a different form and at a different level also altogether. Once you have known the concept, it will going to become easy. Now understanding it, there is talking about it, we are talking about two components to begin with all in all. The first is going to be, that is the establishment of the first green belt around, there is a new term that we are talking about, that is going to be conurbations. Around conurbations and cities, there had been some type of plantations around the city. Now these plantations are going to be vegetative plantations, and it's going to be a protection around the city that is like a shelter belt plantation. Shelter belt plantation means these are the type of plantations that come up and that take place in the, whenever there is a desert, whenever there is a dry area. For example, all along Rajasthan desert, Thar desert, there is going to be a green belt that is covering it from every possible side. And that green belt has been established with an ostensible aim of not allowing the sand dunes to migrate, not allowing the desertification conditions to migrate towards Delhi and the other places as well. So it's a shelter belt plantation which can go on to be in something like some 5 kilometers by something like some 1,000 kilometers, 5 kilometers, 6 kilometers, with all the type of trees one can go on to imagine suited to that agroclimatic condition. So it's a protection around the city that is going to be almost like that of a shelter belt plantation. And such type of green belts have always enjoyed a very high level of public support because the people, obviously, they're going to enjoy this part. And why is it that they're going to be enjoying it? They enjoy it largely because they feel comfortable. Any type of a green belt, people are always going to be feeling better about it. A green belt may or may not separate a satellite town from the rest of the city. A green belt may help a connecting satellite town. So satellite towns are going to be another component of the entire of the city spectrum. So in a sense, assuming it to be so, that is, there were 5 components of the city, beginning with the CBD, residential area, shanty towns or the slums, rural urban fringe, and then the urban sprawl. Now that goes on to get itself surrounded by a green belt. Away from the green belt, or may not be away from the green belt as well, there can be certain type of system of cities which have been established either for a planning purpose, for the purpose of reducing the burden on the satellite, for reducing the burden on the main city, or maybe as a planning method for the purpose of decentralizing the population of the main city. That is what has been our concept in this case here. And when we are going to be talking about this concept, we are essentially in a position to deal with a lot of components here. To begin with, a satellite town is a term that is we are going to be talking about. It's a term which is used to include any town that is closely associated or which is dependent on the larger city. That is dependent on the larger city. The catchword is which is going to be dependent on the larger city. But that is physically separate, but it is still going to be functionally dependent on the main city, which may go on to have a separate, that means it has a corporate existence of its own. That means it may go on to be having a separate existence of its own, but it is functionally mostly dependent upon the main city. And when we are going to be talking about functionally dependent upon the main city, that means for the purpose of its day-to-day work, satellite town will always go on to be linked to the main city. Now pick up an example of something like if you happen to be in the national capital region, pick up a case of Delhi. Delhi has a satellite town in the form of Noida. Delhi has a satellite town in the form of Gurgaon. Now Gurgaon and Noida, both of them go on to be having a separate corporate entity. But despite the fact that they have a separate corporate entity, these cities are not completely having an existence of their own, because they are function dependent. That means for everything, good number of people keep on commuting from Delhi to Gurgaon, Delhi to Noida, Delhi to Ghaziabad, as if they are not separate, they are part of a single entity in this case. And as you can go to take a look at it, assuming that this is going to be Delhi, and which is going to be the central part of it, that is going to be Connaught Place, then you have one of the satellite towns in the form of Ghaziabad, another satellite town in the form of Noida, and still another that is going to be in the form of Faridabad. There will be still another, maybe assuming it to be here, that is going to be Gurgaon. So Delhi is surrounded on every side by a satellite town. These satellite towns have been deliberately established as far as Delhi is concerned for the purpose of decentralizing the population of Delhi. But then some of these satellite towns have been not established, that evolved on their own. But then all of these can go into be different cases. So the development of satellite town is mainly because of the metropolis. That is the main metropolis. The term has been used essentially for the purpose of as a powerful body that is used for the purpose of separating the main city under the influence of a more powerful body, and which goes on to be having its own identity as well, both of them comprising of it, so that it is going to be separate, but at the same time it is going to be one also. You can go to imagine a hypothetical picture of it. If this is going to be a parent city that is going to be linked through roads. Now these roads go on to be almost in the form of a corridor. They are going to be in the form of a corridor. They are going to be in the form of a corridor. That is going to be part of it, and this is where you are going to find a satellite town 1, 2, 3. That is maybe on the corridor or maybe away from the corridor. That goes on to be a condition. But then these satellite towns go on to be having a separate feature all in all. For example, these satellite towns go on to be having their own local government and a corporate life. It's like, take the case of Noida. Noida goes on to fall under Uttar Pradesh. If you are taking case of Delhi, then Gurgaon goes on to fall under Haryana. Faridabad also goes on to fall in Haryana. And there are going to be a couple of them that also going to fall under Rajasthan. So they have a separate government. They may be functionally dependent, but that they are not administratively dependent upon the main city. It's not that Delhi governs them. Then it depends upon a nearby large town or city. For example, of course, if it is going to be Noida or Gurgaon, then dependent upon the main city. Connection to the parent city is by local trains, bus, metro, and you will go to find now a means of connecting agents with the main city. So that people can go to reach the main city easily. There is a freedom to decide, and all of these people are completely free. For example, Noida's entity is separate from that of Gurgaon. Gurgaon is mostly corporate. Noida is not that corporate. Noida is to a large extent dominated by the service sector people. It is going to be service sector that is going to be important. The cultural activities in Noida are also going to be different from that of Gurgaon. These are generally separated beyond the green belt. That is what is going to be significant, and that is why it was taken in the first instance. Separated beyond the green belt if there is a green belt. Now, to be honest, Delhi and Noida do not going to be having a green belt. Delhi and Gurgaon also don't going to be having a green belt in good number of patches, but there is some amount of it. Delhi and Faridabad definitely going to be having a green belt in between. Of course, Gurgaon also going to be having a green belt, but not along the highways. It is going to be all in all very patchy in this case. This satellite town is mainly going to be a residential area having only local shops. It's not going to be something like a local shops, local schools, and for the purpose of children. Although some of them going to be now developing a completely separate entity in the sense that is they are far better than that of Delhi. For example, you will consider and imagine that Noida alone has 85 screens for a population of almost like 10 lakh people, almost like that, or less than 10 lakh people. It will be having something like 7 to 8. The census will go to make it even much more clearer. Now imagine the purchasing power of the people of Noida and even Gurgaon as well. Delhi also does not going to be having that many screens. So of course it is going to be one of these aspects which is going to be a characteristic, of course, which can go on to be the main characteristic of it also. The issues that satellite towns going to face is, one of them is distance and accessibility. If there is an issue, of course, in the case of Delhi, it is not going to be a major issue. The significance is that they are going to be used as a tool for the purpose of for two purposes. That means the tool is to connect centers. It is going to be used as a tool to decongest cities and also to decentralize the activities. That means if Delhi has a larger population, then some of the centers like that of Noida will be used for the purpose of decongesting the population of Delhi, and that was the basic purpose for which Noida was actually established. So thus Delhi established Faridabad, Noida, Ghaziabad, because at one point of a time it was known that Delhi's population will go on to increase to such an extent. And imagine the maze of satellite towns that have been established. Faridabad, Noida, Greater Noida, Ghaziabad, Sonipat, Panipat, Dharuhera, all of them are going to be in the form of satellite towns in this case. Mumbai also go on to be having it. For example, Mumbai going to be having a different name all in all. So they're going to be having Uran, there is going to be Panvel, that is going to be Karzat in this space. Pen is going to be part of it. Alibag, most of the people must have known it. It's an idyllic surrounding. It's a very, very good location all in all, and somewhat serene, and good number of people in Mumbai who happen to be living in Mumbai and who are economically well off, not intellectually. Good number of these people who are financially well off, they do have certain things like what we're going to be calling as farmhouses in all of those places, in Uran, Panvel, Alibag and other places. In a similar manner, you're going to find a good number of satellite towns also in and around Hyderabad as well. For example, this is where you're going to have Ibrahimpatnam. That is going to be the example of Hyderabad. Ibrahimpatnam is going to be a part of it, and that's one example. Chandigarh, you're going to find it. There are going to be two of them. One of them is going to be Mohali. That's one. And the second is Panchkula. Two of these are again functioning as a satellite center for this region, for the whole of Chandigarh. Then picking up another example here, you can go to pick up a good number of upcoming cities as well. For example, Kolkata, you can go to pick it up. Salt Lake City can go on to be functioning as one of those type of satellite centers. In a similar manner, you will go on to find that even Patna as a center is going to be having certain type of satellite towns in the near future when Greater Patna is going to be planned in this case. And forget about all of these centers. Delhi, Kolkata, Chennai has it. Bengaluru has it in the form of Yelahanka. There is going to be another of this center. That means all in all of these places are going to be supporting or dependent upon the main city, and they're going to keep on feeding each other and get fed as well at the same time. So as the city ends, you have green belt. Away from the green belt, you have a satellite center. Having talked about it, it's also possible that a good number of cities go on to merge with each other. That means they're going to coalesce. They're going to be coalescing laterally. And when they're going to coalesce laterally, then this type of a lateral coalescence is responsible for the emergence of one very, very large center and a very, very big city, very large city, which is going to be called by the name of conurbation. That is the name that is going to be given to it. It is going to be called by this name of conurbation. Conurbation is one of those names that have been used. There is going to be another name that is going to be used, and that is going to be called by the name of megalo. It is this name that is sometimes used. Now you will going to find that megalopolis is a name that is going to be generally used in Britain. Conurbation is a term that is going to be used in North America. So North American, British people, all of them try to maintain their different identities, and you will going to find it in the uses of English as well. For example, British people will go on to ask from petrol pump petrol or diesel. Americans are going to say gas. British people will go to ask you to cool down. Americans will go to say chill. So they are different. After all, they are Americans of such. That's what we're going to say. So that is going to be one component. These conurbations are or megalopolis happen to be cities which go on to coalesce, which go on to co-join each other at a different scalar level. For example, if it happens that there is one city here, there's another city here, there's another one here, there's another one here, there's another one here. Now all of them go on to join along a transport corridor. If they go on to join it, they will go on to form what is called as conurbation. Or else it may happen that if there is going to be one city here and it goes on to merge with some of these cities surrounding it in such a manner that they are going to become a very huge, very large center, then that is also going to be a conurbation. So conurbation or megalopolis can go on to take place along a transport corridor, along a roadway, or conurbation or megalopolis can go on to take place by the coalescence of and the joining together of many centers, many small centers of sorts in this case. Now pick up the case. What are conurbations all in all? Conurbations are an extensive built up area. Now the word in this case is first is extensive built up area. It is not something that is like a green belt. It's a built up area and very, very extensive, very, very large extensive built up area formed by the coalescence. That means the joining together of one separate and mainly urban settlements. That means separated settlements which go on to be joining together. That's one. This is a striking feature of urban growth that is taking place in the 20th century, and we are not going to be talking about urbanization. Urban growth and urbanization happen to be two different words, and they are going to be, their meaning is completely different. They represent large scale concentrations of population, activities and services as well. And when we are going to be talking about a large scale concentration of population, we are talking about a big centers. Like the best example of conurbation that you're going to find in the whole of the world is going to be what we're going to be calling it as a bow wash. We're going to be using this name, bow wash. Bow wash, it's a center of a city that go on to be, which are existing from all the way from Boston to Washington DC. In between you have Philadelphia, in this case, then New York, and then Baltimore, up till Washington DC in this case. It's a continuous built up area, and such type of urban centers are also emerging also in India as well right now, and in the future this is where the largest of these will emerge as well. Now understand this part. This is going to be the example of what we're going to talk about a bow wash megalopolis. As you can go on to imagine, the one part that you can go on to pick up is this is where the whole of the bow wash megalopolis lies. That is the region for bow wash megalopolis. This is the region for bow wash megalopolis, beginning with all of these from Boston to Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, and up to Washington DC, a continuous built up area for 500 kilometers. This is a classic example of the evolution of an emergence of a conurbation and a megalopolis. Conurbations and megalopolis all in all represent a continuous town expansion. Of course, it leads to massive urban sprawls, very large urban sprawls. It's like if you happen to move towards bow wash megalopolis from one city to another city, you will go to imagine that the sprawl comes, the urban area comes, and then the sprawl comes. And after sprawl, there's another urban center that begins. And then you move in this urban area, and then you go on to find another of this urban sprawl, and then another city. So 500 kilometers is almost like a continuous built up area. It's like a continuous built up area in this case. So most conurbations are with farm or plan, but then they are going to be served by a closed network of communications as well. That is, most of them are without any farm. Of course, no one has planned it. Who knew at any point of a time that the urban areas are going to expand to such an extent that all of these centers will go on to merge? Consequently, they don't going to be having a plan. For example, some of these type of conurbations that are existing in India or emerging in India, they don't going to be showing anything called as a plan segment as well. But even then, these conurbations can go on to be divided into two components. That means on the basis of how is it that they're going to evolve, there can be two types of it. One is what we're going to be calling it as uninuclear, another is going to be called as polynuclear. The meaning of both of them happen to be different. For example, one of them is what we're going to be talking about, uninuclear. Uninuclear, that means, as the name suggests, one nuclei, one. Polynuclear or polycentric, that means many of these nuclei. So one is a unicentric or uninuclear, polycentric or polynuclear. That means one goes on to be having one center or one nuclei, another goes on to be having many of these nuclei. You're going to find examples of it as well. For example, uninuclear is going to be produced by the growth of a single nucleus, one of them, and in the process it goes on to engulf large number of towns and villages. The best example in this case is London and Paris conurbation. That's one. Second is the polynuclear one. Now, polynuclear megalopolis emerge when there is a ribbon development. Now, ribbon development means if this is going to be a main city, and if such type of development takes place in all directions, then that is going to be called by the name of ribbon development. It's almost like that of a ribbon. And it goes on to allow the filling of the two interstices between two closely spaced centers. That means it can go on to be in the form of that is there is one of the centers that emerges, one center that is emerged, and as it goes on to expand, then these areas will go on to get itself filled up. These areas, all of these areas will start getting themselves filled up with different type of services and so on. So these are the interstices that will go on to start evolving, and they start getting themselves filled up. Delhi is going to be one of them, that is polynuclear. And why are we going to be saying it polynuclear? This is because Delhi has evolved out of the merging of Delhi, Noida, Gurgaon, Ghaziabad, Faridabad, Narela, Ballabgarh, all of these combined. So it's not uninuclear. It's Delhi has, of course, improved over it. Delhi has expanded over it. But then these cities also going to be having a different type of an identity. In a similar manner, you're going to find Mumbai as well. That is going to be polynuclear. And Mumbai's growth has taken place, and as it has taken place, it has moved over Uran, Panvel, Alibag, all of these regions, encompassing all of them, while they were going to be having different centers as well at the same time. So, uninuclear goes on to be the best example in this case is going to be that of London and Paris. Now, that is the case of London at the center portion of it, and it has gone to become larger and larger to engulf a good number of it. Paris is a nuclei. It's a nucleus, and it's a nodal center. It is a nodal center, and because it is going to be a nodal center, it is going to be expanding, and it is in this process of expansion that it has a good number of other centers as well. Two very good examples in this case. Then you're going to find another example of monocentric or uninuclear. Sydney is going to be another one. That is in Australia. That's one example. You're going to find Chicago as well. Chicago is not going to be like that of Bowash. Chicago is going to be at the central point, and of course it has expanded. And then, not to talk about Buenos Aires in this case. As Buenos Aires has gone on to expand in Argentina, then it is in this process that it is engulfed some of these centers like that. Rosario is going to be one of them. And which Rosario used to be a satellite town of such, but now it has completely been engulfed in the Argentinian growth. Other examples of polycentric nuclei are going to be, in this case, of course, Paris is going to be one of them. Paris can be an example of both of them. It can go on to be around Paris, you do go on to be having some of the centers like Lille, Roubaix, Tourcoing triangle. That is going to be one. Lille, Roubaix and Tourcoing center, forming a polycentric one. Pittsburgh district on the western side, that is going to be polycentric. And Ruhr. Ruhr will go on to be comprising of, Ruhr is going to be in this case, the whole of this region will go on to comprise of centers like Essen, Bochum, Düsseldorf, Gelsenkirchen, Stuttgart, Bavaria. All of these centers will go on to become a part of it. Well, in Poland also, some of these are going to be evolving one, polycentric nuclei that are part of it. That means some of these type of nuclei are going to be a normal condition, and they happen to be a normal condition. They happen to be a normal event all in all. Uninuclear are also going to be having a different type of a characteristic. For example, they are characteristic of new countries. For example, some of these like Americas, Latin America and United States as well. In this case, Africa and Australasia, that means Australia, largely because they established one center and that center started growing. Now, it doesn't go on to be happening in some of these old countries like Europe or even India, where there were many urban centers even before the Europeans came. For example, even before the Europeans came in India, although this is something that is not presented in history because of a variety of factors and a variety of reasons, you'll go to assume and imagine that is what has been happening here is in some of these traditional countries like that of India, European countries, there were many centers that were existing. So as one city started growing and one city started expanding, then all the cities also started expanding at the same time. It's not that the main city was growing at a much more faster rate. So all the centers emerged, and when they fused, they led to the evolution of this polycentric or polynuclear conurbation. So that is going to be in those type of regions. Megalopolis, in a sense, that is another name for conurbation, but then you can go to understand it. They are of course very large areas, and the word has been used to differentiate some super large urban centers, not only large, some actually very large urban centers. And it's not going to be one city which is going to be comprising and eating away small cities. It is going to be one city which will going to be having a matching number of such type of cities as well. For example, as you can go on to pick it up, you will go on to find a very large urban centers which will go on to be comprising of Liverpool to northern Italy. Imagine Liverpool, England to northern Italy. And then you're going to be having Randstad megalopolis. This is going to be another Randstad megalopolis, that is in Netherlands, and comprises of The Hague, Rotterdam and Amsterdam, all three of them combined. Then there is going to be another one that is from Rhine Valley to Geneva as well. This is going to be another place. And then you can go on to pick up Atlantic seaboard of United States. When we are talking about Atlantic seaboard, we are talking about Boston, Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore and Washington DC, comprising all of them along a single line. That's the Atlantic seaboard. And also in Japan. And we are talking about which place in Japan? Osaka, Kobe, Kyoto. All of them, there are going to be conurbations that are very large, and Japanese have become deft in managing it and trying to manage it as well. They are actually very deft in doing it, all of them. That is a part of it. That is megalopolis. Such type of megalopolis are emerging in India, and that is a recent phenomena. In Indian case, the emergence is going to be all along the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor. That is going to be one. Vizag-Chennai industrial corridor as well. Delhi along with Mumbai as well, that is going to be another one that is going to be emerging in this case. Now pick up the case, and also with respect to Kolkata to Mumbai as well. For example, picking up this region. Now this is the region that we are talking about, that is all the way beginning from Delhi to Mumbai. You will recall that this is one of these regions that is being now touted as going to be one of the world's largest of the megalopolises. Can you imagine how many urban centers it will go to engulf? You are going to be having any guess, and that is the place where a super national highway is also being built in this region. It is this supranational highway that is being built in this region and this place that will be largely responsible for the transformation of the country. That is number one. Second is you can go on to pick up other of these centers that we are going to be talking about. Vizag industrial belt, all the way from Chennai to that region, and also from Mumbai to that of Kolkata. That will going to comprise of Mumbai, Nasik, Dhule, Akola, Amravati, Nagarjuna, Konda, Asansol, and then ultimately up to Kolkata. That is how it will go on to function as well in this case. So this has been the case all in all. That is with respect to megalopolis. So what is a megalopolis? What are the types of it? What is the conurbation? And so on. So satellite town is different from a green belt, and then a conurbation is different from that of a satellite town, and of course there's slight amount of a difference in a megalopolis as well. And one of these most recent evidences of megalopolis evolution has been with respect to India, and India is going to be one of these examples that is going to be presented to the whole of the world. Another of this urban form is, other than, not green belt was not an urban form, but it was one structure, one aspect that was separating 2-3 urban areas. So it can go on to be something like a satellite town, conurbation, and megalopolis. Entrepot is going to be the other one. By entrepot we mean that is a center. It is going to be all in all a center which is going to be very, very different. And how is it going to be different? A center to which goods in transit are bought by temporary storage and re-export. That means a center which goes on to be acting like that of a temporary storage and which can be re-exported thereafter. It's like a port. It can be a port. Imagine that to be a port which is used for the purpose of sending it to another country. Like Kolkata used to be working as an entrepot for Nepal. Haldia used to be working as a port as an entrepot for Nepal once again, till Mamata Banerjee destroyed it. Of course, all the politicians going to be having their own interest. So maybe some of them go on to be thinking of merging it into Bangladesh and converting into a different country, or taking it or making it something like a different country. But then such type of aspects apart, the term entrepot is going to be used as an adjective. Adjective in the sense that is you're going to find Antwerp, Rotterdam, Singapore. Singapore is going to be functioning as a port for good number of centers inland as well. Why only for them? And you're also going to find Antwerp and Rotterdam for most of the European landlocked countries as well. So it is essentially a port where goods are received and deposited. Of course, it is going to be free of duty for the purpose of export to another country in this case. Maybe you can go on to think that it is synonym for a free port being increasingly used. Sometimes, of course, this form has now been changed and maybe it is going to be free port also. But then, what are the terms that are going to be used in this case? That leaves a big question mark. Now, these are the examples of where exactly you're going to be having entrepot. Amsterdam is going to be one of them. The Hague is not exactly an entrepot, but then Antwerp is, Rotterdam is going to be another one of them. These are going to be the two of them. Singapore perhaps is going to be the best example. Singapore, which of course is an overgrown name of an Hindi name, Singapore. So this is going to be an overgrown part of it. And Antwerp in Belgium is going to be definitely entrepot, because for most of the European landlocked countries, this goes on to be acting in such a form. Now Singapore, other countries can go on to be having their own port in this case. For example, Malaysia also goes on to be having its own port. But the advantage Singapore goes on to offer is it's an island. You're going to find it's going to be an island surrounded by water bodies from all the sides here, from all the sides. And the advantage in this case of Singapore is it's such a specialized port, such a good port, such a large port that you will imagine that this acts in much more than only one way for other countries. Why is it that the other countries will want to require it as long as Singapore is there to help them and support them as well? So these were the different types of urban centers. That is, we all began by talking about a city, a town, and the city and town used to be comprising of a CBD, then some residential areas, and then it was also comprising of shanty towns, slums, of course rural urban fringe, and then urban sprawl. That was separated from a green belt. Away from the green belt was always going to be a satellite town, and away from that, and merging of many of these centers that was leading to the formation of a conurbation and megalopolis, and some of these urban centers which are going to be functioning as a port or a service center for other regions, other countries, that is going to be called as entrepot. Now all of these topics are going to be asked to you in the form of some question to you, and it's essential for you to have known the basics of it. We have talked about the basics of it with examples. There can be a lot of questions that can be inserted. Of course, these questions are going to be in any case part of the entire of the curriculum. You're going to find it in other section being associated with it. But then, having known it, you will be able to answer a question that what are the problems that the green belts are facing and how is it that you can go on to solve these problems. Or maybe that you can go to think of what is the controversy surrounding the formation of a green belt and establishment of a green belt, and how is it that green belts can go on to be a good planning exercise for physically separating or connecting one city with the other one. That can be a type of a question that can be framed here. That is the nature of the cities, the nature of the urban areas. Now, having talked about it, there is going to be a second component, that is what are the processes that are responsible for the formation and evolution of these urban areas. That means what are the urban processes? Urban process, that means what is urban growth, what is urban development, what is urbanization, how is it that they are going to be different from it, and so on, so forth. While a city develops, then in the process of development of a city, a lot of terms are used. Now, all of these terms are going to be different from each other, and all of them going to be having a different meaning. Now, in general, there is a tendency to merge all of these terms and use most of these terms in an interchangeable manner, so much so that one of them goes on to get completely blurred. Now, to understand that even better, the whole of these urban forms and processes or urban processes and form, they can go to take a variety of type of shapes identified by different type of terminologies. One of these terms in this case is going to be urban growth. Urban growth is very different from that of urbanization and urban development. Urban growth is simply increase in the number of people living in the urban area. That means it basically refers to the increase in the density of the population, increase in economic activity over this region, so that the area under urban growth goes on to increase, and urban growth essentially goes on to imply an increasing percentage of people living in urban areas, nothing more than that. So, if a city grows in size, in terms of area, if a city goes to grow in size in terms of its population, and if it is that the processes that is sustaining the city also go on to grow, but not qualitatively, that is called by the name of urban growth. That's one. Second is associated with urban development. Now, urban development is different from that of urban growth. And how is it that it is going to be different? It refers to the improvement of the urban area, and how is it that an urban area can go to develop, and how is it that the improvements can go to take place. One of them is going to be associated with the improvement in the services. That means the quality of life of the people go on to develop. That's largely because we are able to provide a good number of services to the people. Second is aesthetics. Now, by aesthetics we mean that is how is it that you're going to look at? You're going to find good buildings, good houses, neat and clean streets, parks are going to be well maintained in this case, and also that the conduct of the people is going to be very, very good in this case. Conduct, that means none of them are going to be rude, none of them are going to be super selfish, none of them going to look at you with the purpose and intent of harming you. That means going by this definition, Delhi is far, far, far away from urban development, largely because you're going to find everyone who is after you, how exactly that they can go to harm you, how is it that they can go to fleece you, how is it that they can go to cheat you in this case. It's one of the most snobbish societies in the whole of this planet that we're going to know. That's it as an example. Not everyone, but by and large a majority of them are like that. That means people's conduct leave a lot to be desired. That is, the greatest cases of road rage you're going to find in Delhi. The greatest case of the theft of people's intellectual properties and so on that you want to find in Delhi. It's a cutthroat competition in like most of the cities, but then the values with which people going to be doing it, so that leaves a lot to be desired. Of course, if that is going to be good, that means you're going to feel good to live in that place. It's going to be a good conduct, and it's not like Auckland, it's not like that of Christchurch, it's not like Helsinki, it's also not like that of Stockholm. Well, except for the fact that we cannot go to take an example of Stockholm, whatever the Muslims have done in that region, whatever the Islamic jihadis have done in that place. That's a conduct. So it's no more a safer place, largely because the intent of the Islamic jihadis is to convert the whole of Sweden and go to soup by increasing their population and by creating a lot of chaos in that place. That's by and large well known. Swedish city, which used to be coming under urban development, will start coming under urban growth after some time. Then you're going to pick up urban amenities. Urban amenities, that means the quality of life of the people going to improve, and that will going to include urban amenities will going to include water quality, air quality, entertainment quality, transport, health facility. Now from all of these, can you go on to drink good quality of water in Delhi? No. Is it that the air quality is good? No. Entertainment, you can't go on to find a decent place in Delhi where you can go on to spend your time in solitude. There's no park where you can go to do it so. And of course, transport facility and health facility, they are better than most of these places, but then of course that leaves a lot to be desired. So from a perspective of development, even if you're going to take a subjective example of Delhi that we have taken it, Delhi doesn't want to qualify to be a part of it. So that is what we're going to be calling it as urban development. Urban development, all in all, goes on to get manifested in the happiness of the people. Whether the people are going to be stress-free in this region or not, whether the crime rate is going to be low or not, whether the people going to feel safe in this place or not. Also, that it also goes on to imply that is whether the city is able to exhibit certain conditions where people are able to recover from that stress or not. Now from that angle, if you're going to compare Mumbai with Delhi, Mumbai is a far better place because Mumbai has sprung back from a very, very abysmal condition, and you can go to pick up at one point of a time it was a government sponsored terrorist attack which you're going to be talking about 26/11 in this case, essentially to demean one of the groups of people in this case. Then you can go on to think of anything in this case, but then the people is sprung back to life. Urban development has less of a spatial connotation because it is going to be consisting of quality, and quality. It has to do with people. If it is that the people are good, if that the people are well behaved, if it is that the people are very well mannered, if it is that the people can go to make you happy, if it that the people go on to flashing a million volt smile to you, then of course you're going to feel good about it, and that has to do with urban development in this case. So urban growth is one part, urban development is something different, urbanization is very, very, very different. Urbanization is all in all is a process. As we're going to say, it's a process. That means it doesn't come all of a sudden. It's a process of change within the people. It's a process of change in the psyche of the people, in the lifestyle of the people, in the interpersonal relationship, attitude, perception. That means everything. That means it is going to be about how is it that living in an urban area, you change yourself so as to make the other person happy. How is it that you're going to bring about a change that goes on to transmit this type of change in the society. It is a process of becoming urban. It's a process of becoming urban, not only urban. That is the word that we're going to be talking about, urban. It is this process that is going to be most significant in this case. And then it goes on to comprise a lot of complex process of change affecting both people and the place. A lot of complex process. That means when we are going to be talking about a lot of complex process that go on to affect people and places, that means it is going to be concerned with components which are beyond only roads, buildings and other components. That is urbanization. Urbanization is like a society that is it's like a society that may have been wearing a traditional look, which may be having a local thinking as well, which may be having a world thinking as well, which may be having a universal thinking, and of course it is going to be a mixture of all of them, and you're going to enjoy living in that place. That means a process. It's like you have come from a rural area. Now, having come from a rural area, you undergo such type of a transformation. And in the process transformation, you maintain your traditional zeal. You maintain a traditional way of thinking as well. But at the same time, you wear a modern outlook as well. Modern, that means one that is flexible. You become more flexible also. You become more tolerant as well. And the society starts moving towards being a cosmopolitan citizen. Now, this is fairly significant. One of the best examples of societies being a cosmopolitan citizen is going to be that of Dubai. There is 218 nationalities in Dubai represent themselves in that place, and all of them going to live peacefully. Of course, thanks to the protocol of the government that they all going to be. Otherwise, this is unimaginable in any Islamic country, any Muslim country, that the people can go on to be tolerant towards each other of sorts. That is part of it, and it will go on to include urbanization, will go on to include a lot of sub-components thereafter. For example, what all that urbanization goes on to be comprising of? One of them is it goes on to comprise of progressive concentration of people. That means as people happen to come from a rural area, there is increase in the concentration of the people. There is a progressive concentration of people and activities in both towns and in cities. That's number one. Second is there is a change in the structural characteristics of the population. Structural characteristics means there are certain type of changes that take place in the way people go on to behave. There are certain changes that going to take place where the way people going to behave economically rather. That means whether they are engaged in economic activity and what type of economic activity. That is, are they engaged in primary activities, or are they engaged in secondary activities, or are they engaged in tertiary activity? That is about the characteristic of the population. So the people start changing themselves to start adopting some urban form of life. And then the change in the economy or country of a region where non-agricultural activities go on to dominate. And non-agricultural activity go on to comprise of certain things like secondary activities, tertiary activities, quaternary activities, and quinary activities. Now, what all these activities are, what are secondary activities, tertiary, quaternary, or quinary? This is part of economic geography, and you can understand that part. This is part of economy as well. But then primary is concerned with agriculture, mining. Secondary is concerned with the processing of agriculture and mining into something better, to produce something on a very large scale. Tertiary is going to be about trade. It is going to be about services. Quaternary is going to be high level services, and quinary is going to be about executive decision making. That means it is a very, very high level activity where people go on to make a certain type of decisions, in this case quinary, and it is these decisions that ultimately go on to determine a lot of policy changes in the government. With one policy, they can go on to bring about so many type of changes. It's about ideas, and it is the last part of it. So in urbanization as a process, most of the people have a tendency to move towards quinary activities. Then the spread of urbanization means that is, it is beyond the built up area of the towns and cities, and of course reducing rural dilation. It is mostly it is going to be associated with the change in the attitude of the people, attitude, behavior, and psyche. Attitude, behavior, and psyche, that means people in the urban area will start behaving in a more urbane manner, in the sense that is the characteristic of people living in a city. People living in a rural area are going to be characteristically different. For example, they are going to have a laid back life. People in the urban areas will going to have a more prompt life of sorts, a more faster life also. That will going to be reflected in the dress of the people. That is reflected in the way people going to speak. They will be suave, sophisticated, and in the sense that is they will not go on to be hurtful to anyone. And even if it is that there are going to be certain type of differences, and having certain degree of intellectuality, they will go to accept those type of differences, unlike in the rural areas where there are extremes of viewpoint to a major extent in the case, in that case. So the attitude will go on to be that is in a rural area, people will be concerned with the creed of that person, the faith of that person, and also the way the person goes on to not carry himself, but the way person goes on to be dealing with a lot of things in terms of traditionality. Here, traditionality is something that goes on to take a complete backseat. It can go on to be in dress. That is, a person living in a rural area will go on to have a different dress code. And why? Because person living in an urban area will have to move on the bus, they will have to move faster, they may have to run on the roads. They cannot go on to have the same dress. They cannot go on to eat the same thing that the people in the rural areas are going to be eating. They cannot go on to have a very heavy meal. And why is it that they can't go on to be having a meal is because of a simple reason. And that reason is only one. And that is they are living in a different environment, and they are living in an environment not only for themselves but also for the entire of the population in this region. Moreover, it also goes on to comprise the transmission or diffusion of these changes. That is going to be even more significant. That is, how is it that they're going to transmit it? And this transmission means that is going to be objective. You will going to find that people behaving and believing Twitter, people believing in Facebook, which is not within the four walls of it, not within the boundaries of the definition of urbanization. It's not so at all, largely because people who are urbanized, the people who are urban, they are very sophisticated. Twitter, Facebook is all about spreading lies. It's one type of a media which is an industry, and that industry in the whole of the world is has nothing to do other than to spread lies. They mastered the art of it. And of course, this is the basic reason that the people who are believing in these things without any logic, without coming to the process of logic, that means that's significant. Whenever you're going to decide something, you decide something on the basis of the process of logicking it out. And if you're going to decide on something without having undergone through the process of logicking it out, that means you are not urban at all. In this case, that is urbanization. Now, a person who is going to be urbanized is urbane. Most of the time, those type of people who are going to be urbanized, they are always going to be cosmopolitan, always going to be cosmopolitan. That is the name. And by cosmopolitan, we mean a global citizen. You go on to take him in Delhi, from Delhi to Singapore, from Singapore to Auckland, from Auckland to Texas, even on the 7th Avenue of New York, or even some places like Buenos Aires, they will go on to be able to adjust in this place because they are global citizens. This is what it means, literally a citizen of the globe, which is free from local and national prejudices. In geography, that means in this case the word tends to be used adjectively to denote an ethically and culturally mixed population. Your concept of beauty is completely different. Your concept of attraction is completely different. Your concept of a lot of things happen to be very different in this case. So that's largely because you have evolved your concept in such a manner that you tend to become different in this case. That is cosmopolitan citizen. And when we are going to be talking about ethically and ethnically and culturally mixed population, both of them, we have talked about both of the ethnically and culturally mixed population. That means it's like Dubai. Dubai is completely cosmopolitan because it does go on to show people from so many countries, and you will go on to find a Bhojpuri speaking person from Fiji as well in Dubai, but they will be very different from a Bhojpuri speaking person from Bhojpur district in Bihar. Very different in this case. So that is going to be cosmopolitan. Urbanism in this case means that is the life values and attitudes that characterize the people who go on to inhabit towns and cities. That is it's type of a philosophy that you go on to follow. That means you can go on to carry this urbanism even into rural areas as well, and that goes on to define you. It's like the type of character traits that you go on to inhabit that goes on to define you. Now, when you go on to undergo such type of a process of becoming urban, of course, you tend to follow a lot of things that are going to be associated with urban growth and expansion. So how is it that what are the things that you're going to follow? Of course, we are going to be talking about urban growth, urban development, urbanization, and in this case, following the entire of the pursuit, one of them is that you will go on to follow residential segregation. residential segregation. Segregation, that means you tend to segregate yourself. You are not going to be easily mixing with a lot of people whose lifestyle is going to be very, very different from yours. Maybe let's say it's like that is you will not go on to mix with a person who is from a rural area and who are more rustic in their outlook, who will be like something like bumpkins of sorts in this case. It's one of those forms. Consequently, what you will going to do is that you will going to segregate yourself residentially. It's like if you have followed a lifestyle, and this lifestyle is going to be all about in the evening you will go on to remove your clothes, you are going to be in your swimsuit, you are in your shorts, trunks, bikinis, and then you go on to be in a swimming pool, and suddenly you're going to find that there are some rustic people who start whistling at you, who start ogling at you. Of course, you cannot go on to enjoy in this place at all. You have a lifestyle, something that you can go to defend. And if you are not in a place where you can go to defend it, you will go to residentially segregate yourself. It is this residential segregation that is going to be significant, that is going to be important. And it is born out of urban growth and urban expansion. Residential segregation is a completely different process. You will always going to find that in the urban areas where the plot size are bigger, for example 1000 meters, maybe 400 meters, in comparison to 100 meters, then the behavior of the people is going to be very, very, very different. And why is it that we are very different? Because generally people who will go on to be owning a plot size of 400 meters, they forget about the fact that they have a higher amount of money and their bank balance is going to be good. They will be much more well behaved in comparison to people who are having a 100 square meter of a plot size and who can go on to pick up a fight at the smallest instances as well. Now these are the people who will go on to move into the colony with a blaring horn and whatnot. Now why is it that you will go on to burn your blood by being in those places which those people you don't go on to like? Consequently, you go on to residentially segregate yourself. So, residential segregation is going to be one of those processes of it, and it's going to be one of those forms of it. Another of this form of urbanization is what we're going to be calling it as counter-urbanization. And counter-urbanization is something that is you start moving towards the rural area because you do not go on to like the urban areas. You have a compulsion of living in a urban area because that requires some type of economic activity, that requires being with the people in that region, because you're going to be having your offices in that place. Counter-urbanization is you will go on to have a tendency, thinking, you have a personality, you will go on to have an urge to keep on moving towards the rural area and keep on moving. And there can be many explanations for some of these aspects of such type of a counter-urbanization, which has started picking up in India as well, and that has started picking up very well in India now. That is, you will going to find increasing number of people moving towards the farmhouses, owning farmhouses, going towards the rural area. So one of them is going to be the increased cost of living in the large cities. That's going to be one. Of course, that has been helped by internet. Now with one mobile, with one computer and internet connection, you can go on to have your office anywhere in the whole of the country now. Then that's one. Then improvement in the personal mobility, which will go on to allow families, individuals to realize their preference of living in a small cities. It's like living in a quaint city, very peaceful, and that is you can go on to visit any of these places within something like some 10-15 minutes. In some type of metropolises like Delhi, any place that you have to move, you will have to take something like an hour or 2 hours of time for that purpose. While in a smaller city, a smaller town of sorts, what you will going to do? Only 10 minutes from one place to another place and you are going to be there. It's as simple as that. It's as easy as that. It can go on to be, for example, if anyone has moved from even a capital city like that of Patna to that of Delhi, you will going to find that from one place, from the CBD of Patna to that of the peripheral areas, it just requires 10-15 minutes of free traffic time. Of course, the traffic, because it is going to be heavy, it may going to take some amount of time, but then the distances are very short in this place, and that is preferable. Now, it doesn't mean that people are going to move towards Patna, but then a small quaint town which can be something like Palanpur, something like even a smaller center, which is going to be somewhat neat and clean in appearance, which goes on to be oozing some amount of a peace, that will going to make it better. Also, that some of these industries, some of these economic activities are something that you can go to locate or relocate in all of these areas, particularly during the times of economic crisis. You may also going to think that the people are going to be helpful to you in such type of regions as well. Now, all of these factors are going to be significant while considering this part. The people generally will start moving towards the rural areas away from the urban areas. That is what is called as counter-urbanization. Now, strangely as it may go to feel, it is the people who have destroyed the rural areas. It is the people who have depopulated the rural areas. It is the people who have allowed the degradation of the villages. It is the people who are thinking of going back to the rural areas. What a contradiction.
To have more such discussions and analysis, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for notifications on our upcoming videos.